Welcome to Sober Talk. I'm Dennis and I'm an alcoholic. Sober today thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you or anyone you know is struggling with alcohol, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 222222 or visit their website at aa.org.au. I'll just run through the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for a membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. It is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses or opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety.
Hi everybody, I'm John, I'm an alcoholic. Welcome. Nice and cool in here, I think. You just read We Ask God for inspiration and intuition. I'm doing that now. I'm sober. I'm here sober. I'm amongst my relatives. I know that there's a bind that binds us together. And when we share, as we do on the path, we share different things, little things. But through that comes this bog. And I love what Peter says, and it says in the book, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices for the alcoholic. This program has got to have weight and depth, and the love between us has depth and lasts. I was taken to AA in 1978 by 2 AA members. I didn't ring Alcoholics Anonymous after 14 years of drinking. I had no home, no wife, no family, no job. Parents wouldn't accept any more phone. I used to phone them up and abuse them. If I wasn't phoning them up and abusing them, I was begging them for money. Two ways of looking, I'll say, our lives. It's one with the knowledge that we have after coming into AA and experiencing recovery. And there's one that I would like to concentrate on is what happened to me before I got to AA. Because the big book puts it, and I can't find better words, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I didn't study a book to become an alcoholic. I didn't go to some college and this is my life. I'm going to be an alcoholic, a hopeless alcoholic that's looking at death, insanity, or jail, or three of them. And that's what I'm going to do with my life. I wasn't happy at home. My father was Hungarian, my mother Yugoslavian, which is now, I believe, Bosnia-Herzegovina, something like that. But they argued. Mum had the attitude, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and we speak English now. And Dad said, oh no, we're Hungarian and we've got it. So there was that. And Dad was a very, very strict authoritarian. He believed in hitting you. I remember on one occasion, I was young and people were coming to the door collecting money. And I observed my father go to the door and say, I'm sorry, I've got no money. And he shut the door and I said to him, but Dad, you've got money. I've seen your wallet. And he hit me hard and he said, don't ever do that again or I'll cut your throat. And yet on the outside, I often wondered whether he was an alcoholic. I think he was a rageaholic. On my mum's side, there was alcoholism. My grandfather died of it. She warned me when I started drinking seriously at the age of 16. Dad had a television show here in Adelaide. At the time, he had a cookery school or a restaurant, and so it was fun. I got to remember to keep this before I got the knowledge from Alcoholics Anonymous and free sobriety. I just was frightened with all this. I just wanted to leave home. I can remember dressing up in my bathers and putting a towel on as a kid, climbing up on the shed roof and jumping off, believing that I could fly like Superman. I believed. I actually talked myself into believing that I could actually fly and be like Superman. There were problems between my sister and I. I loved my younger brother. I still love him today. I can remember pinching my mother's miniatures at a young age. Dad used to come home early. Well, he'd come home, but Sunday was the day that we were disciplined, brother, sister, and I, and more so me. Mum wanted him to be more part of the family, but he absent father, I guess, is the term. And I just felt this uncomfortableness, and I used to bite my nails, nervous about the place. And yet with my school friends, I found the answer. It was with people that were violent, that would bash up other kids. And I worked out with my brilliance and genius, if I stick with these guys, if somebody ever picks on me, they're going to look after me. And I followed that right into after I had to join up for national service, my mother cried and said, oh, I'm going to lose more family through another war. Traumatic time for her. I was going to be very much influenced by TV programs like The Untouchables and Audie Murphy. My mother liked the cowboy stories, and the Lone Ranger. I identified with I was going to be the Lone Ranger. And I developed this fantasy that I felt so vulnerable. I thought, if you've got a gun, you're not vulnerable. If you mix with violent people, they will look after you. Not my father. There was nowhere. And my mother was just unhappy all the time. But she would do things like buy me aftershave from Avon. And when Dad wrote a letter and went to Sydney and didn't come back, she was crying and crying. And she said to me at the age of 15, now you're the man of the house. And I can remember feeling this overwhelming fear of the man of the house. And straight away my mind went off of me again and on to somebody who I knew was a good man. And the man that I closely related till I was brought up in the Catholic religion, through my mother. My father wasn't interested in religion. And I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, see, I get out, I'm remembering getting out of myself. I didn't like being inside myself. The answer was always out there, the Lone Ranger or Elliot Ness. I'd made up my mind when Dad left home. Yes, after my mum said, now you're the man of the house, I think back now and think, Mum, I'm just a little boy. That would have been but I was even too scared to say that. I said, I'll look after you, Mum, I'll look after you. And I remember we had a buggy that lived for about 14 years. And I came out of the bedroom one day and there was Mum in the lounge on the floor with the cage, and she had dead Pretty Boy in her hands. And she said, Pretty Boy's died. And she was crying. You know what my reaction was? Mum, you shouldn't be crying. Get over it. And I spoke like that, forgive me, but that's, no, you don't, you feel good for it. You don't feel they're bad. No, you got to be happy. You got to be happy. It reminded me how I felt inside. I didn't, that fear, and I didn't know thoughts and feelings and things like that. It was only through Alcoholics Anonymous. When I was taken here in 1978, all I had was hatred and rage buried. buried, so much so that after 3 months of being in this hospital at the age of 28, the counsellor who had taken us through the group for 3 months said to me, "John, if you ever drink again, you can come back to this hospital." And my attitude was, no, I'm never drinking again. And meaning I'm never going to be vulnerable like this again. And the other thing was hatred towards God, that I couldn't express that in group. This loving God, I looked at the first step and said, I'm all right, I'm Catholic. Oh, thank God I'm Catholic. I have the true God, and I acted that out when I left that hospital. In my first year, I went to a priest, and I believe I virtually talked him into giving me an exorcism. I was overcome by, I've got to have an exorcism. This priest said, I've got this poor young man that's come to me, but obviously he's got some problems. And he said, okay. And so that all this rage and that and people talking about it and the pride, anger. I didn't think I had any. How can I have pride? I've been bashed and put myself in these horrible situations. And God, how am I supposed to? I didn't want to leave that hospital. 1978, I'm out of hospital. But what I do have is something that I didn't have before, a desire to go to meetings. I went to my first meeting and this loving God said, I'm going to put inside of you a desire to go to meetings. And I tell you what, I was just happy that I had an alternative, because I didn't want to be seen as this hateful, loving. I remember being at a meeting and somebody said, are you happy about being sober? I said, yes. He said, have you tried telling your face about it? True story. Have you tried telling your face about it, John? Well, if this is what AA is like, my fantasy, CFO. No wonder I was nearly committed. I was given a choice, go to this AA hospital or I was going to be committed in an institution. The mind had gone and drinking and everything, and I never wanted to drink again, but these emotions came out and I went to meetings. Couldn't stand being alone with myself, and I'd think of AA and I'd feel good. I started getting all the books. AA Comes of Age, the 12 Steps, the 12 Traditions, the Big Book, pamphlets, literature. I got all these books, and the trouble is I started giving them away. I'd read it, then I'd give them away. I'd give them away to other alcoholics, forgetting that all this stuff was rage. I just wanted to love. I didn't want to have these hatred and bitterness, and they were no good. And so I stopped drinking and life happened. Kept going to meetings. I had a wife at the time, and I would always say to her, I'm a month sober, I'm 2 months sober, I'm 3 months, I've got a job now, I'm doing this, I've got this money, do you want this, all this. Of course, my validation was through her and couldn't see it at the time, but that's how I was. And there's so much more, but I tell you, there's nothing worse for me that I found that led me back to drinking quicker than you honest newcomers that have come and you talk about yourselves. You talk about your anger and your bitterness and your fears. I have so much admiration for that because I couldn't do it. I would rather die, literally, than tell you any more about my vulnerability, because I had to learn about this loving environment. And it's really about me helping somebody else and encourage somebody else. Yes, Alcoholics Anonymous. Just talk about whatever comes out, but don't be like me. Don't be frightened and suppress that and everything. Because I went to psychologists and psychiatrists. I still wouldn't tell them. I'd tell them something else. At one stage, I was asked to speak, and I told them a sponsor's story because I didn't think mine mine was dramatic enough, you know. So I still wanted accolades, but it's very lion, and you know, I hope I'm giving some sort of picture to what alcoholism and what this loneliness and fear and everything does to us that have shared their lives with me, you know. Look, it's 7:30. What can I say? I've relapsed and relapsed. And Sam and I were talking outside, and we both came to the conclusion that drinking, drinking again and staying out there is a lot worse. I'm a lot closer to suicide, taking my own life and hurting others than I do and come in here and say, I've had a drink, I've had a drink, I don't know what I'm doing. I just want to be sober. And breakdown, it's safe here. That's what I've found. And I still find it today. In closing, American Diane's here. Lovely to see you again, and we talked outside. I was drinking again. I'd relapsed, and this was about, I'll be 5 in a couple of weeks by the grace of God, so it's 5 years. Perhaps 6, 7 years ago, I was in Foodland doing some shopping, and I saw American Diane, and I acknowledged her as a sober member, but I slipped away because I felt so ashamed. Diane came back to me and said, John, please come back to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what I want to do for others. Thank you for listening. And look, I pray for more and more courage to talk about the broken man that's still in their parts. 28, 77 this year. But I'm back here. And Peter and I said, God bless Peter. We just don't pick up the first drink and come to meetings. Thank you.
AA has more than 2 million recovering alcoholics throughout the world. In Australia, there are about 18,000 members. They meet in over 2,000 local meetings spread around the country. Meetings range in size from a handful in some areas to hundreds or more in larger communities. And once again, if anyone you know is struggling with alcohol issues, please call Alcoholics Anonymous in 1300 222222 or visit their website on aa.org.au.